Hi there, everyone. Clint Adams here, and I am recording episode number 26 of The Full Landscape with Peter Lievre from Adelaide Plant Recovery. Peter was kind enough to come in at short notice and not only bring his assistants, who are
under the table,
Bonnie,
Maggie, come on,
and pork rolls and pork bowls. And as usual, a very good conversation. We talk a lot about his business today, I guess around how he moves plants, why he got into what he got into, and what's in store for the future. So hopefully you really enjoy this one. If you've got any questions, all of Peter's details will be linked up at the bottom of the podcast. Thank you.
Y'all ready to turn it up tonight?
I guess to start off with, if you can just explain to everyone listening and watching a bit about your background, and I guess how you can start from high school, university, whatever it was, and how you got to now being the director of Adelaide Plant Recovery.
Done. Well, when I was a kid, I got my inspiration for plants, I suppose, from my grandma in Adelaide. So she had a beautiful garden and always had so many unusual plants, all these bulbs, all this sort of stuff. So every time I grew up in Geelong, so every time we came over, there was always something new in her garden. From that, I sort of took that on board and always was passionate about plants.
Yep.
I used to sell plants or flowers on the side of the road when I was a kid, so probably starting about 8 until through to finishing university. I was doing bits of it, but that was sort of pocket money, and also keeping that idea of plants are cool, plants are nice, and interest. So that sort of started my interest back then. From that, when I was sort of probably 15, I decided that didn't like being cold and wet, so this is a good time of year with rain outside to sort of realise that being outside all the time, being in horticulture, probably wasn't what I was going to do. I was also working my body too hard at that early age of my life. Yep. And said it's going to hurt. So at that point I decided to go off to uni, study to be a geological engineer or geotech.
And you finished that?
Finished that and went into mining. So from that I spent 12 years plus in mining. Wow. All around Australia. So I worked in every state but Queensland, doing mining, and went from geotech into production engineer to business improvement, project management for the last 2 roles. So from that I ended up in the Hunter Valley in a residential and a black coal mine, doing business improvement, production and that sort of stuff, where it was all about changing people's behaviours to the way that the business wanted the people to go, and minimising costs and increasing production. So from that got made redundant. It's about 6 and a bit years ago, so 6 years ago last month.
How many years ago, sorry?
6 years ago.
6 years ago?
Last month. At that point, I renovated our house. So I did 3 months renovating our house, kitchen, bathroom, painted the whole house, fixed up all the yards, packed up all our belongings into a shipping container, and the shipping container got back to Adelaide 10 days later, and we took 3 months to get home. So we went from that on a big holiday. Yep. We're basically Singapore, Beijing.
Oh, so not driving around Australia?
Not driving around Australia. We did drive back to Adelaide to then fly to Singapore, spend a week in Singapore, Beijing, then jumped on the Trans-Siberian Railway for about 40 days, going across Mongolia and Russia, ending up in St. Petersburg. Then went to Portugal, Paris, came home. So we spent sort of about 2.5 months overseas.
Wow. To
get home at the start of November or mid-November, and not really knowing what to do next.
November, what year?
6 years ago, so 2013. And, you know, at that point, I'd got a really good payout for getting made redundant. So I'm like, well, there's no point in getting a job before Christmas, because I want to have Christmas off.
Yep.
And then January came around. It's like, well, it's the bottom of the mining bust at that stage. So I didn't really want to go back into fly in, fly out. And so I studied. So I went, the Regency TAFE's just around the corner from where I lived. So I dropped in there, and I've always believed the paddock to plate idea of food. So I love cooking food, and I've grown up on a small farm, so we've always slaughtered our own beasts. So now I study to be a butcher for 6 months while waiting and figuring out what to do.
Did you finish, or was that the butcher?
Yep, I'm tertiary qualified butcher, so I can break down any piece of meat. So from lamb to pork to chickens to all that sort of stuff.
And never got a job related
Never
to
got
that
a job.
after the back of it?
So I got asked by the lecturer, it's like, why don't you become an apprentice? Like, you'll be a second year apprentice. And I said, well, because I'll be on a tenth of what my last job was. Like, you can't take a step back that much.
Yeah, you'd need to open your own butcher shop effectively.
And you've still got to do 2 more years of stuffing your body up before doing that.
Yeah.
In that process, I've always looked at Gumtree for cool plants, and I dug up a cycad while I was still in training.
Yep.
Bought that. Took 45 minutes to dig it, and it was like the head of it was similar height to me, so it was quite an old cycad.
Yep.
And dug it up, took it back to my house where I was living, and potted up into a 400 litre pot or something like that. Didn't know what to do with it, but used block and tackles and all this other stuff, which I look back on it and going, well, that was a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Very cheap, efficient way of doing it. And now, but it took a long time and lots of manual labour.
But time was something you had.
I had plenty of time. When you study full time as a butcher, like you do 5.5 hours a day, that's full time for 3 days a week. So there's
a lot of other time.
A lot of other time. From that, it turned into digging up agapanthus for the client that I got the cycad from to landscape their front garden. It's just a fill-in job, and that led to finding that I could dig up agapanthus quickly and sell them. And that started my original business, which was Adelaide Agapanthus, which is what my name was, I think, with Waterpro from the start.
Well, people, you would have, that would have been, I guess, up until
4
the
years
last
ago.
year, very well known name.
So from that, we haven't sold any Agapanthus for, 6-12 months.
Yep.
I couldn't even remember, but the efficiencies behind it that we figured out on how to, I figured out on how to dig them quickly, so we could dig about 1,000 every hour.
1,000 agapanthus an hour, fully grown. That's dug and loaded into a trailer, and I used to just have a wheelbarrow person come along to pick them up, put them in the wheelbarrow to the trailer, put in the trailer, and they're ready to go. And by the time I was finished, they still had 20 minutes of me just sort of sweeping and having a water or any other liquid substance to get through the day. And the agapanthus, where did they go?
That was just sales. Most of it went to sales. So I've still got about 20,000 at a property up in the hills, sitting there wondering what I want to do with them.
So you have 20,000.
I've got 20,000
agapantha plants in the ground. Looking for new homes.
I wouldn't say looking. I'm not advertising to sell them at this stage, but it was a idea, a concept. And I've just grown out of that business. So at this stage, it's not I much prefer not to do lots of customers. I prefer to do one customer really well and move a big plant and actually use the technical challenges and the engineering background, the project management behind moving like a massive dragon tree where the logistics behind that, you've got like 10 people working you for one day. So you've got I've got a tree on my books at the moment, which is like there's a truck driver, there's a crane rigger, there's 2 escorts. There'll be me, there'll be a labourer, there'll be ETSA or Power Network of SA following us through the route. Like there's up to 10 people interested in on that job. So that to me is much more interesting, technically challenging, rewarding both in sort of your mindset as well as the financial reward. A lot of hours behind it, versus just dealing with agapanthus and getting asked the same question: how many agapanthus do I need? Telling them how many agapanthus that they need, and then getting told I actually only want 10.
There's only 2 coloured agapanthus. Is it purple and white?
Look, they're the 2 varieties that we most know about. But inside that, there's I could go on way too much about agapanthus. There's 3 sizes in size. So there's mini, dwarf, and standard. Inside those sizes, there's categories of 9 inside those sizes. So there's 20, whatever that is. So 28.
When you were doing that, would you tend to only take certain sizes and colours, or you?
I just took them as there was 2 types, or 3 types of agapanthus in my life back then. There was white, which was the most expensive because people who want white, they got a white Audi and white kitchen, so they want white. Then they want blue, if you want blue, and then you don't care, you just want green leaves. So I called that budget, which is genuinely just blue. So if you've got budget people out there, from me, most likely you've got blue. Inside that, you'd then sell the different variety, like the sizes. So you'd sell mini, dwarf, and whatever. But the minis and dwarfs, they just weren't very profitable, to be honest. People want them, but they also don't want to pay for the time and the effort, and they want
because it's such a small plant. They just look at it and go, "How can it be worth that much money?"
Correct. So you can't sell it for the same amount per plant and that sort of stuff. So I still have that. I still have potted stock of that floating around for landscapers that I do a fair bit of business with.
Yep.
But I don't advertise that we have those.
You're saving it for them almost, or protecting
Yeah,
them
it just
for them?
sits there, just chills out until people need it, and it may turn back onto a business later in the future when I have my own land and can develop that stock. But at the moment, it's just about the time versus reward.
You're making your choices around where you spend
my time.
your time. Yep. So at some point, obviously, it's gone from Adelaide Agapanthers to Adelaide Plant Recovery.
Yep.
Tell me a bit about that. How did that evolve?
That started literally. I'm a very observant person, so I drive around looking at things, talking to people, and from that, it was like I was doing agapanthers and small plants. So agapanthers and clivias and iris and bigger plants. So roses, like standard roses, and then bigger and bigger, and then driving around. I was just bought lunch for my wife, taking it to her work, and drove past, and there was a house that was clearly getting demolition. Then there was a truck out the front. Went and spoke to the supervisor. He goes, "Oh yeah, come and take what you like." And then gave him my number. The next week he rang me up, and there was another plant. And the next week there was another plant, and the plants got from small to bigger to bigger to bigger to bigger. At the same sort of time, I had a friend around the Torrens to Torrens project, and they said that they gave me a number for a contact there, and the government was quite happy for you just to come and take stuff of value, and I was allowed to go through and grab as many plants out of there as possible. So our first sort of frangipanies came out of that area, and we moved sort of from that. At the same time, it just kept on growing. So it went from being my backyard and my driveway and my front yard and my driveway, and not having a driveway left, to it sort of got to the stage that we had to move out. So as I do, I always talk to people and know what people do. And my dentist had just bought a factory just down the road he wasn't using, and moved into that for potting up and planting. And at the same time, I started renting a block of land up in Summertown, which was my small plant nursery. So we're doing thousands of small pots, which were just recently closed down recently because it's just not my business anymore. And at the same time, it was growing to bigger plants and whatever. And then at that point, when it was 4.5 years ago, we moved into our current yard.
Yep.
And we took on, it was about 2,000 squares, 1,500 squares to start off with. And that's sort of grown from that to about 7,000 square metres now.
Yep.
Over that sort of 4-year period. And it's just been that progressive growth, and we need more space, and our business changes, and we need more space to do this or that. And that's where we've got to now. So inside that, there was lots of other little steps and changes. So
that land that you've got now, there's obviously a lot there. We've been there, and if anyone wants to have a look at what I'm referring to, we did a deep dive with Peter. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get some context around what I'm talking about. What was happening? You just kind of agreed on paying rent on the front half, and then just started moving further in.
It's always been square metre payment per square metre per annum, and based off that. And it's just grown. So I put an ad with all my business that started from Gumtree. So I put an ad on Gumtree for a plant, or for a piece of land of around 1,000 square metres within 2 kilometres of the local pub.
Yep.
And
that was your driving force back then?
It was a bit private on who I am, so I don't like to advertise where I am, where I live.
So you just wanted to say
that. That was without giving away what I'm doing. It's a reference point that everyone knows where it was, and it's 2K within that, and we're based around Wingfield, so there's plenty of land. I didn't actually know the suburb next to us was Athol Park.
Yep.
And when this person rang up and said we're in Athol Park, it's like, where's that? And it's like, on this corner. It's like, where's that? And it's like 500 metres away from my house.
Yep. Perfect.
So, and that's where it started from. It just got bigger, and that same sort of time, that it sort of progressively grew. We dug up that same supervisor on the demolition site, his boss. I met his boss, and I saw one of their trucks driving down the street one day, and it was just around the corner from where we were. I stopped, spoke to the guy, and I said, I love that frangipani in the corner. Dug it up. I said, can I grab it? And he goes, yeah, it's just rubbish. He dug it up, put it on my trailer. This was as I'm driving to the airport to go on a holiday. The guy who was working for me at the time took it back to the yard, just stuck in the corner until I got back. And now that plant is in the Little Miss Crab Shack, or whatever those guys call that now. Yeah. So, and that led to the next thing of putting plants into fringe things. So from that those guys owned the Royal Croquet Club.
Yep.
So the last Victoria Square Royal Croquet Club, we put a heap of cool big plants in there, and that led to building products out of recycled timber. So we built planter boxes around that, and then that led into other things. So that led into my furniture, my pop-up bar side of my business, which is just another hobby, I suppose. It's grown.
You enjoy doing it.
Yeah. So I've always loved timber.
Yep.
And always loved using my hands. So it just gone from plants to all this beautiful timbers getting thrown away. Worked out how quickly it is to get timber from demolition sites, and built furniture from it.
Yep.
And that led to building other things. So the guys, I had a random guy yet again. This always happens around my holidays, my Bali holidays. I had an open day and I was like, I can't be bothered doing this today. And I just took down the posts. Well, I paused all my posts, not realising that Gumtree, if you're watching it already, pausing doesn't mean it disappears out of the pause, out of your watch list.
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting thing. And this guy rings up and goes, "Where are you?" Like, "I'm here to buy a cactus." I was like, "I don't have any ads up." He's like, "Yes, I do. I'm here looking." So I quickly ducked back down the yard, and that led into a contact putting frangipanis and styling the Belgian Beer Cafe for Fringe 3 summers ago.
Yeah, cool.
Which led into building other pop-up bars for that group. Yep. So at the Ramsgate, we did a pop-up bar. We did 2 pop-up bars with plant and timber, recycled timber, and that just sort of added to cash flow. So I enjoyed doing it. It fitted in there. It was good cash flow. It did take a lot of time, a lot of brain waves and stress, but that was just a filler. It's like when you're growing a business from nothing.
Yeah, you take what
you take what you need to get going to do, and we're sort of slowly ramped that back. We've got a few customers we still do stuff for, but we're not advertising that we do pop-up bars anymore at this stage. It's another one of those projects that's on the back shelf. If someone asks and it fits into our timing and I can get the right resources to help, we will do that again.
So you don't have any staff as such?
Not really.
Not employees?
At the I've just taken on an admin person.
Yep.
So the first official employee that I've got on my books.
Yep.
But I'm more of a alliance person. So I have subcontractors or alliances. So people...
Because when you need to do something, it's... And then
Correct. So we're very, on off. And that's sort of a good thing for me. I like really working hard and then sort of sitting back and doing my thing and then working really hard and doing that. So actually having I'm not doing mining because I don't want to work for a big corporation and I don't want to be tied to 50 hours a week for the man.
Yep.
So being able to do the things that I like. So when you call up and say, "What are you doing Friday?"
We can podcast you.
I can do a podcast. Or if I need to go spend time with my son, I can do that.
That's good flexibility, actually.
It's really good to be able to go, "Hey, it's a nice day. Let's go pick up my son from the daycare and go to the beach, go to the park." And I've got nothing on.
Yeah, because you can move stuff around.
There's always a list of jobs when you run a small business. I'm sure lots of people are here. There's always work to be done. But you don't need to do it.
No, it's not going to... Yeah, it's funny. I talked to the guys a bit about that. Like, everything you're worried about is going to be here tomorrow. I'm conscious of introducing our other 2 guests before we get too far into the podcast. So if anyone who knows Peter obviously knows that he always travels as a threesome. If you want to introduce... Obviously, anyone who's listening to the podcast isn't going to understand what the hell I'm talking about.
So I have a supervisor who has been with me from day dot. So we've got Bonnet, who's my Labradoodle. She's 9 years old. And we've got Maggie, who's my apprentice. Now, everyone knows an apprentice tries to do what you want it to do, but never does the right job and always does it sort of fuck shit up when you don't want it to fuck it up. And that's Maggie. So she's...
This is Maggie here.
Yep. So Maggie is a Grotto, which is a unusual breed for Australia, but it's an Italian hunting dog or truffle dog.
She doesn't like DK holding the camera, I don't think.
Yeah, no,
she's
a bit funny about that. But they come everywhere with me, so they're really good quoting tools.
Yeah,
they're really good to suss people out. So when I'm in the process of rebranding my business, I'm talking to accountants and lawyers about how to set it up properly versus being a sole trader. You take them in there, don't you? And if they tell you to get out, then clearly don't want your business. They're not for me. It's really quite easy. And the same with quoting. There's dog people and genuinely nice people, and then there's those horrible old people that just are so impersonal and just think that you're a paid service and you're a slave for them. And if they ask you what are your dogs doing here? It's
Yeah.
like, and then they get really abrupt.
Yeah.
Versus you get someone sees the dogs there and goes, hang on a sec, closes the door, runs back inside, and then there's a bowl of water
Yeah.
and a lamb roast for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on, that's a cool job that I want to be on,
Yeah.
because every day I'm going to get scones, coffee, lamb roast, or whatever. So that's a good tool.
Like scones?
Or scones. So and they're cool dogs. Everyone asks me on how
Well, how many people have asked you if they can have your dogs? Like,
numerous.
I'm just like, I like these dogs. They're pretty cool.
Everyone states your dogs are so well behaved.
Yeah.
But you got to think about this, Clint, is that you have a dog at home.
Yeah.
Your dog gets to see you for a half an hour
Yeah,
a
yeah.
day. And it puts all of its day's energy into that half an hour, and it's just uncontrolled.
Yeah.
It needs to get all of its senses out. When my dogs are out every day, they get to meet people. They get to meet other dogs. They get to get pats. They know where my car is. They know where I am.
And they're pretty sight savvy. Like they understand excavators and.
Bono is amazing with excavators. She walks around a demolition site with a 20-ton excavator and a truck, like better than a human would.
Right.
She would put
She's got more
herself into a safer locations than a average person off the street.
Yep.
Forklifts, like same.
Yep.
She knows how the forklifts work. She walks next to the forklift. She doesn't walk in front or behind.
Yep.
She's most concerned or curious when people tell her off.
Yeah.
For
why? Why am I being told off?
Like get out of the way of the car. It's
Yeah.
like, come on, out the way. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking for me?
I'm fine.
I'm fine. And she's more chance of actually getting run over at that point versus
because she's been interrupted.
because she's being interrupted,
Yeah.
where she's just mingles around like it's like almost like a school of fish around a big ship. Like the ship goes straight through the guts and doesn't hit one. The dogs will just walk around and do their own thing, where they're really quite good.
So
and they do other cool tricks as well.
I was going to say, we've got a microphone up there for...
Bunny.
People are probably wondering why there's a third microphone, but
Well,
I wasn't sure if our other two guests were going to sit on chairs or not, but considering we're behind a window...
I do have a cool... Bono particularly, I haven't spent as much time with Maggie because I've been too busy running a business and having kids and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But when we had Bono and Bella, we were bored and we spent a lot of time training. So one of the things we trained Bono... Come on, you can sit down for me? No, sit. We trained her to sing, and what better song to sing than... How much is that dog in the window? The one with the waggly tail.
Tail is wagging for anyone that's listening.
How
and not
much
watching.
is that dog in the window? And I can't remember the rest of the song.
That's all right.
But she does cool things.
And she likes Vietnamese pork rolls.
Well, she likes any human food.
Yeah.
And we did mention earlier that it was someone else's day.
Yeah, so it's Jamie's
Jamie's
birthday today. Jamie's my assistant, for anyone that's not familiar with the business. She turned, I think, 36 again today.
I reckon it was 21 with
21 today.
15 years of experience,
Yeah,
we could say.
Bonnet sung her happy birthday earlier.
And it's one of her beautiful things. She always goes, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, which is a bit of fun.
So the dogs are with you every day?
Pretty much.
Unless you go somewhere that you can't.
Look, there's certain jobs, when I'm sitting on an excavator all day and you're next to a major road, look,
you do a risk analysis.
You don't want to look at it. You don't want to think about it.
Yep.
You want to get that job done. I do a lot of work for the state government with Housing Trust, and those guys genuinely ask me, where are the dogs today?
Yep.
Or why aren't they here?
Yep.
So most people are pretty good about it.
Yep.
There's certain big organisations where we go to, warehouses.
And it's not so much that they don't want the dogs there, it's just they can't have the dogs there.
They've got corporate policies, but there's lots of people that also try and bend the rules because they see that they're not a high risk, but it also depends on management styles and that sort of stuff.
So you mentioned the Adelaide Plant Recovery. Obviously, there was a rebranding there, and you've talked a little bit about, there seems to be a common theme around, I guess, saving beautiful things and rehoming them. I guess talk to me a little bit about why you chose that name and what it means to you to be able to save these things and why that's important to you.
Well, I suppose when I came back from the Hunter Valley from mining, I was driving around and I had a lot of time and I had a lot of time to look at things, and I kept on noticing these beautiful gardens just disappearing, with all their plants in it, and I was like, oh, that's a bit strange. Like, surely there's a market for mature, cool old plants. Like, you can't, like, you go to Bunnings, you go to the small nurseries, and you like the biggest pot you can see is 45 litres, and it's like, you know, and that's classified as advanced or a mature tree, and it's like, hang on, surely there's a market for these big old trees. And it was at that stage there, I was doing the small agapanthus just as a filler, as a sort of bit of holiday money, a bit of beer money, just to fill time, and so on. And it was like, from that, I was like, surely there's a way that someone has figured out how to save these plants and then rehome them. At that point, you know, another Bali trip, sat by the pool, had the beer that you drink in Bali, had another gin, started thinking about names. At this stage, I'd started to get plants already, and it was like, I started the idea of like Adelaide feature plants. I was like, that's a cool name. It sort of tells what you have a feature. Yep. It's Adelaide, it's a plant, Adelaide feature plants. And then I'm like, as a startup business, you can't really have a brand of Adelaide feature plants. So if you have 2 plants, that brand works. You sell one plant, you then got to drop in
feature plant,
and then you sell the other one, you Adelaide feature something.
Future features, perfect. I didn't, so it was like, at that point, I'm like, well, if I want to, I don't like disappointing people. So it's like, why don't you choose a brand that actually represents getting stock? So my Adelaide feature plants has always been about getting stock. Until you've got the stock levels that you can actually stay, you've got plants to have a name like Adelaide feature plants. 18 months ago, I decided it's probably time to start rebranding, and I've been busy. So at the moment, we are in the process, bringing on an admin person and that sort of stuff. There's enough time to grow, and there's enough sort of admin support behind us to actually flip over to the new branding. So in the next 6 months, probably by spring, we will have a new website, new brand, because one of the things we keep on getting told by sort of mid to top end landscapers is we don't like telling them to go down and see Pete from Adelaide Feature Plants, or sorry, Adelaide Plant Recovery, because it very much sounds like you're selling them a second-hand plant. Yeah, okay.
And when there's a price tag of where we put it at, they don't like, say, go down and see a second-hand plant, but you're going to spend a lot of money.
So are you renaming the business?
So we're renaming the sales part of it, of our sort of our top-end plants. So we will still have Adelaide Plant Recovery for getting our plants, but then for the top-end landscapers who do want to actually have that plant to fit into their top-end landscape when they're buying like pavers in at $100 a square metre, they're buying in, like they're putting in a 50, 100 gram pool, all that sort of stuff. They don't like, it's a branding. Like, you don't want to go get a classic car, like a really cool car, and say go down and see Pete's second-hand shit boxes. You know, but he's got a really cool car at the moment.
Classic car recovery.
You know, so I suppose it's about the rebranding to actually highlight that our top of the range, so our A-grade plants, and that's where we're actually doing a lot of education around it as well, that our A-grade plants will be getting sold through that top-end market, and then the B and C grade and the moving plants and the installation of it will be going through the Adelaide Plant Recovery. So I suppose watch this space. There's a lot of cool work happening in the background, no different to what you guys are doing about changing your business for growth and fitting expectations. Like, people realise you can come to here to get all your irrigation stuff. People can come to that end and look at all the other bits and pieces. So the cool top-end plants. Also, the thing that I'm finding is there's a demand for the stuff that I find on demolition sites. So those cool old red bricks, all those Jared joists, I'm starting to see those getting put into landscapes. I'm starting to see them, like a Jared joist turned into a fence that doesn't have a rail, it's just stuck in the concrete or stuck in the ground with concrete, and using that sort of stuff. No different to when you came down last Friday and saw this random structure built out of just recycled, and it's like, first question was asked, and then the second question was like, how did you do it?
I was going to say, for anyone listening that doesn't know what Peter's talking about, he had so I guess there's two sides to it. He's set the yard up now so that it's more accessible, I guess welcoming and homely for landscapers or potential customers to go down there. But there was a Master Landscapers event there last Friday, and it was raining, and so Peter just decided to build a pergola, or a temporary structure. Maybe DK will be able to cut in a photo or an image of that in the actual video if you're watching now. It's just somewhere here. But for anyone listening, you can check it out on our YouTube and probably at your... What's your Instagram? Is it
Adelaide.plant.recovery.
Yep, all one word. So, that timber, it's something that I'm quite... I guess I like it. I like the old timbers and the red bricks and, the whole Port Adelaide region, the old wall sheds and that kind of thing. Is that something that... Do you know where that started for you? Like, you obviously like to salvage this stuff. It just...
Yeah, that was all salvaged.
It feels wrong for you to let that stuff go?
It definitely, like, I see something and I see that's worth something versus to be smashed up and turned into recycled something, and they call it recycled when you put it through a chipper or a grinder and turn it into road base, or you turn it into mulch or so on. So I feel that is a wrong thing where you got all this beautiful timber. The roof trusses were taken from a house that my old man helped me load onto the trailer, and it's just quick. It's like you can get those beautiful products. Like those trusses have been sitting in my yard, and I've probably moved them 5 times, and now I've finally got a project for them.
But you can't remake them.
Not from Oregon. So Oregon's not used anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like this cool old, like, I was like, should I denail it? Should I not? Should I take the old cables off for the lights, or should I not? And it's like, well, it gives it a bit of a charm. It's something different. Yeah. And just reuse it. So even down to, like, my biggest cost for that was the screws and the fasteners.
Yeah. And if you really wanted to, you probably could have salvaged some screws, but that's getting pretty crazy.
Yes.
I got a family member who likes that. My father-in-law. Every time we take something apart, he'll take the nails home, straightens them out, puts them. He's got the time. He likes doing it. He grew up like that, so
yeah. So
whatever makes you happy.
There's definitely a thing around that I'll probably start doing more of that once I get more time and once I get.
Do you think you'll have staff?
I definitely I see
to do that stuff.
Yep, I definitely see there's room to do that.
Yep.
There's room to bring in alliances, so bringing in, like, subbing some of the land out and actually getting someone else to do some of that work, and then having my branding to sell it. So once it's there, you can basically resell someone's product.
Yep.
And it works better for me, where I find the work that I do is actually hard and it's different and it's boring, and employees get bored very quickly. So actually having someone who has a, like, KPI, e.g. you clean a brick and you get a reward.
Yeah. Then they can move faster,
and they can, and if they don't turn up tomorrow because they feel like they've got a headache or an earache, and with an earache you can't operate a hammer to stack a brick, they don't turn up. Where if you realise that you got a monetary reward for turning up, and more you do something, it's a good KPI. So I suppose that's coming back from my mining background, where KPIs are very good for changing behaviour and driving behaviour.
Yep. I guess I'm interested to know a little bit more about, I guess, a plant transfer. So you've got a plant either comes out of someone's yard and goes directly to another site, or comes to your site and is boarding with you until it moves to its new home. So how does that process
How does
happen?
the process work? Well, everyone asks, where did my plants come from? My phone rings these days.
So you've got enough of a brand in the market now?
I've got so much of a brand, I turn away probably 60%, 80% of the stuff that comes across my desk.
Yep. Is that because you don't want it, or you can't take it?
More that there's not a market for it.
Yep. So if someone rings you up and says, I want to sell you a pine tree, there's no market for it.
So it's all about, there's a cost.
Yep.
Everything, like I've had comments in the past, like, you get your plants for free. Like, I can sit on the couch for free.
Yep.
That's free.
Yep.
Like, when you're moving a plant, it's not just about the actual purchase of the physical item.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we buy certain plants. So going back to that really basic model, there's 3 types of plants in my world.
Yep.
There's plants I can make lots of money on.
Yep.
I buy them.
Yep.
There's plants that are either really common or I make enough money on it. I take it.
Yep.
There's plants that there is no resale value or very low resale value, and it costs me more to get it back to my yard or to someone else's house. You pay for that service.
Yeah.
It's a simple service.
Yep.
Like, you can't call a plumber up and say, oh, but I've got all the taps and the fittings, I just want you to install it, and say, hey mate, turn up, I've got all the stuff, you can do it for free.
Yep.
I've never heard of a plumber turn up for free.
No.
It's no different to this sort of service, where if you don't make a dollar at the back end, you don't make a dollar.
Well, as noble as it is for you to salvage plants, it's still a business.
Correct.
There's economics there. You need to
do something.
Well, otherwise you can't keep doing it.
So getting that from the first start, or the first point, is you find a plant, we assess if it's economic.
Yep.
Clint, you don't tell me if it's economic.
Yeah.
Because you've seen it on Gumtree.
Yep.
Like, that's what I get told a lot.
Yep.
We assess if it's economic.
Yep.
We then come and look at it.
Yep.
We look at access. Access is a big thing. When you're talking plants like palm trees, my biggest palm tree moves 18 tonne. You know, it's not just, so even down to the dragon trees, frangipanies, they still weigh stuff. And it's like the first thing you got to look is, can you pick that up and put it on your trailer?
Yep.
And
without damaging it.
Without damaging it or damaging yourself. So the average human's good for about 25 to 30 kilos.
Yep.
When you're talking a dragon tree.
Well, what was that? We had a dragon here that we gave away. That would have weighed 100 with the pot.
Yeah.
We had to forklift that into the back of the thing, and that was tiny.
The frangipani was big.
The dragon was
the dragon tree, that was borderline. That's not an average person.
Yeah.
Pick up, and that was a baby plant. So it's what can you do if it's in someone's backyard? Generally, we're not interested.
So you're looking at front yard access.
We're looking. My preferred sites are demolition or clear outs.
Yeah. So you can drive straight in. Grab
you can walk in. You can, if there's a carport in the way with an excavator, you just pull that down, push it out of the way.
Yeah.
You push it all out the way. You dig up the tree. You put it on the front of the excavator. You put it on your trailer. It weighs like the excavators we use are good for about 600 kilos.
Yep.
That's like 20 people.
Yep.
To put it on your trailer, it's in, out. You don't have to clean up.
So you've got good systems to get these plants either to their new site or to your site.
Yep. So
and I'm assuming the survival rate's high.
The plants we select, we put processes around them.
Yep.
So different plants mean different things, need different requirements.
Yep.
So,
and you've learned them over the last X period.
So it's from trial and error and talking to different people through different networks.
Yep.
And so on. So there's lots of work around that I've developed. We specialise, if you follow our Facebook page, we specialise in three things.
Yep.
Mainly, and that's frangipanis, dragon trees, Queensland bottles, or the brachychiton family. We do palm moves for people. We don't do palms for people. So we don't take on palms.
I guess, is there a misconception that's kind of hung over from the 90s that palms are worth a lot of money? And
I like to use it as a red car example. So I've got a red car, Clint.
Yeah.
I think it's worth $10,000.
Yeah.
How much do you want to buy my red car for $10,000?
No.
Why? It's a nice red car, Clint.
Yeah.
Come on, Clint. Why can't you buy my red car for $10,000?
Yeah.
You said no. Why?
Yeah, I don't have $10,000, but
so the perception is that all red cars are worth $10,000.
That's
Or all palms.
To put it that simplistically,
all palms are worth $10,000.
Yep.
Now, there's over 300 types of palms in the world. There's other plants that get classified as palms. So there's about 1,000 plants that we call palms. Are all those palms worth something? Well, no.
So some palms are worth money.
There's some palms, like your Canary Island palms, if they are the right plant.
Yep. And they're only worth what someone's willing to pay.
They've got set rates, but most of the money gets paid to the crane company.
Yep.
Most of the money gets paid to everyone else.
Yep.
So if someone says a Canary Island date palm is worth $10,000, it would have to be a 10-metre trunk. It would have to be perfect. It would have to be male, and it's $10,000 on a truck.
Yep.
It's not $10,000 in your backyard.
Yeah.
It's
and then there's the other half.
So then there's the rest of the other, like cocos palms. If anyone else rings up and asks about a cocos palm and how much it's worth, we have a cut down list.
Yep.
So if you've got a cocos palm and you call us up and say, I've got this beautiful cocos palm, it's so healthy, it's fantastic.
Yep.
You're not calling me to move it, you're calling me to cut it down.
Yep.
Cut down your beautiful cocos palm that drops rubbish everywhere that you hate.
Yep. Okay, I know what you're saying.
So you're not calling me up to get me to come and move it because they are worth nothing.
Yeah.
There's just...
So you just refer them to an arbor, a tree cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for people that have been, I guess, aware of you for some time, they would know that you name all of your plants.
Yes.
Why?
They've been around for a long time. So they've always got characters.
Yep.
There's a bit of a connection that you have to have a reference to it.
Yep. So it needs a code or a product ID or whatever.
When someone rings up and says, "Oh, that frangipani you moved the other day," or that dragon tree you moved the other day, well, in the last 3 years, we've moved probably 150 frangipanis, or saved or whatever. So that one we moved the other week. Or if I put it on Facebook saying if you want it, give us a call. There may be like 2 days later, I may have another one.
Yeah, okay.
Another frangipani. So I reference it back to something.
Yep.
Is it a street? Is it the person who called me up? Is it is it that I've spoken to Inika, and Inika says Bruce should be a good name for that bottle tree that you're moving now? Is there such like that? So it's a reference point for me. When you ring up, you say Jesse, the fan aloe. Jesse's one of my contacts in Queensland who's always wanted fan aloes, and I sent him a photo and he's like, that's amazing, like I'll come down and pick it up tomorrow because it's an amazing plant, like it's just an amazing plant. So that's a link to me to go, Jesse, that plant came from McGill on Adelaide Road, McGill, back to my yard. Jesse's that cool plant in my yard. So when you can talk up and you can then cross-reference it.
Without having to refer to a computer photos, it's all in your head.
It's all in my head. And it goes down to also that if there's a client who wants a dragon tree and you send 3 photographs of 3 different dragon trees, instead of saying photo 1, and if I send a text message to you, mine goes from iPhone to Android. And is it always going to be photo 1, photo 2, photo 3?
You deliver a $5,000 tree and it's the wrong one.
Wrong one. It's sort of that coding that if you can actually make it easy for someone, it also gives you that sort of heart moment that, it's Jesse. Or for instance, I moved one of my first dragon trees. It was massive and I named it Frank. Now ironically, the person who bought it was Frank.
Oh wow.
Which was very ironic. I didn't plan it that way. It wasn't linked that way, but it was like, that's like weird but funny and quirky story. And it's just sort of, I know that when I drive through Norwood and I see Frank standing up, or I can send people to that saying that address and say, we've got that cool plant, it's Frank, go have a look at him. I can almost link it back to him and so on around the world. So
is there like, you've obviously got a son, is his name off limits for plants?
Look,
or do you have that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
if Thomas, my son, it's the first plant he helps dig with the excavator and he's probably going to be named Thomas. Isn't it? So
because you know how you kind of like when you're naming your kids and you're like, I went to school with a dude with that name and he was no, we're not using that name. Do you know what I mean? Like,
look,
or do you use that?
There's a reference point. There's always a reference point. I always try and reference it back. Like, as I said, like Bruce the bottle tree, Inika was talking to me on the phone while I was watering it. There's a link back to it. So is there a link? Is there not? It could be Thomason. It could be something like that. It could be something else. Like it's just got to be a link back to that day.
Do you have a favourite plant? Like, not
favourite species?
Well, I was going to say I shouldn't probably clarify. You tell me. Do you might have do you have a favourite individual plant that's sitting in your yard now?
I would go back to the whole thing about, like, do you have a favourite Vietnamese meat roll shop?
Yeah, I do.
I would say I have, in Adelaide, I've got my top 3 Vietnamese meat roll shops, depending on what you're trying to do. So do I have a favourite plant? I've probably got 6 in my nursery that is like just, they're really cool plants. And they just mean, like, just to be able to achieve that plant to where it is, to save that plant for that sort of stuff. Probably one of my most favourite plants I've moved was a Queensland bottle tree. It was done just before Christmas this year, or last year, and it was a cracker of a plant. Jake, I think I named it. No, Sean, I named it, sorry. So Sean was actually the excavator operator who called me up. And he called me up and I was on a job and I was in between cranes and excavators and everything like that. And I just didn't answer the phone and I got a message and it's like, yep, I've got to call this number back. And it was like this absolute cracker of a Queensland bottle tree.
Yep.
He spent 2 days trying to find my number, so he had to ring up other contacts of mine and to find my number, because he got a new phone, as you do, and he finally got hold of me and he's like, you have to get this plant off site before 5 p.m. today, and this was at 11 a.m. And I look at the photograph and it's just an absolute cracker of a plant, and it's like, yeah.
And that's when you go into
that goes into, I need to project manage this. I've got to run 5 options to make sure you can get that plant off site. So I was like, I'm driving, so I'm like booked an excavator, or seeing if I can get a crane, a truck, all at the same time, all that day, everything like that. had to get permission to take the plant because it wasn't a company that I've worked with before. So all that sort of stuff, and I was running like 10 different angles to try and save that plant. And
do you get adrenaline from that?
The adrenaline's definitely. There's like that sort of cool, like that's amazing. Like it's the letdown at the end, like sitting back and having a beer, going, that is a cool project that you just like magically somehow achieved. Like, how did you organise a crane at the last minute, an excavator, a truck, a location for it to go, all that sort of stuff very quickly.
So you're obviously, I don't know how many people know, but you haven't had a beer for a very long time. What do you drink after pulling out a plant now?
Water, ginger beer.
Ginger beer.
You don't. It's just a. It was that. This is
the full stop.
It's the sit down when you've got 2 or 3 people running around, or not running around, but packing up your chainsaws, packing up your slings, tying down the load, sitting down and just go, that's pretty cool.
We saved it. We got the plant.
It's a cool plant. Like, why? Because us as humans, we're very wasteful people. Like, we're very wasteful in Australia, and it's like that plant had no reason to get culled.
Yep.
The only reason it was because I've decided as a human that I want to put a pull in.
Yeah.
Like, I could have.
And so then you as another human, Peter, decided that you can save it.
Yep.
Perfect.
But saying that, there's cool plants in my nursery. There's probably 4 or 5 in my nursery, which I'd say that I liked for similar reasons. Like Jesse's one of them. Jesse's the fan.
So do you like them because of the story or the look, or just it's this holistic?
The holistic, it's like why they're probably more the bigger plants.
Yeah.
So they've had 40, 50, 60, 80, 90-year-olds
so you got
experience.
We saw a really old frangipani.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of my cool plants. It's where I was driving the back streets, missing traffic because peak hour, like it takes the same amount of time to do back streets as find a cool plant as what it does to do major roads and not find a cool plant. And so I drive around and I was doing a backstreet drive and I saw a for sale sign on the back of a block and there was 2 cool frangipanis. Rang up the real estate agent, knocked on the door, did a few things like that, and there was 2 frangipanis, and this lady rang up and it was the daughter of the owner, and the owner was 95 years old and she was knocking down the house to put a 2-bedroom house, low maintenance.
Yep.
And the story is that basically all of her kids, all of her grandkids have had a photograph under that frangipani from when it's been planted in the backyard. So her kids are like, her daughter was 65, you know, her grandkids, her great-grandkids have all had photographs on the first day of school.
Wow.
You know, that's cool.
And
like,
so that, is there some kind of like, do you want them to know where the plant went? It's kind of like when you know, if you donate an organ to someone, you're like, well, it's with a young man who's a pilot. You've just saved a pilot. Like, there's
certain stories behind those ones. Yeah, look, those 2 particular frangipanis, look, they're massive. They're 6 meters tall. They're not going to go into an average backyard.
No,
they'll turn
be
up
a big feature plant.
They'll turn up to a hotel. They'll turn up to a development.
So like a public space with someone.
A public space, most likely. So they'll be. That's the sort of way they're going.
How long will you sit on a plant like that for?
Until it sells, really.
Like, what could that be, 5 years?
Well, my business has been running for 4, so they've been here for 3.
Yeah, okay.
How long do they sit around for? Well, look, when they're a wow plant, like, why just give it away?
No, and that's...
my perspective is that there's certain plants in the nursery which are A-grade plants.
Yep.
Like, they're just... Anyone who could walk in there goes, wow, that's amazing. I run a business. So why would you just give it away for
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just more curious as to...
How long would I sit on it for? Well...
till it sells.
Until it sells.
That's right. And that's I wasn't expecting you to... Because I know what'll happen. You sell that plant for half what it's worth.
Yep.
The next day, someone will come in looking for it. And you'll be like, shit.
And it's not even that. It's just like, then your reputation is your half-price plants.
Yeah.
When someone wants it. Where we've got plants from $1.
And it costs money to keep them there. I think it's just something that I talked to Carl Heine about as well. This perception that, I guess, plants, you don't do anything, you just have them. And there's so much more.
Exactly. There's fertilizer. Like, how much does a 20-kilo bag of fertilizer cost? How much does the weeding cost? How much does the watering cost? How much
electricity?
How much does that plant? Like, what's your cost of having that piece of land per year?
Yeah.
And Carl would have said the same. He's got a number that his nursery space costs X amount of dollars per year.
Yep.
And that bit of land has to make you double that.
Yep.
If not, it's not worth the effort.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
when you were walking around my nursery, there was small plants on top of big plants.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's for a water efficiency.
There's a water
standpoint.
efficiency. It stops the weeds on the big plants. All that sort of stuff. Water efficiency. You can't overwater the small plants because it goes in the big plant.
So, what does a normal day? And I know asking you anything with normal in the question is probably stupid. But what is it? What can happen in a normal day, or what can happen in the day in the life of Peter?
I've sort of had probably 4 different days. I have one of those days a week of your phone does not stop ringing. It's like ringing, messages, Instagram, Facebook, and it's like you can't get anything done.
Mm.
There's plant moving days. My phone gets turned off. You're less important than the crane and the truck and whatever.
So, like a doctor or a surgeon would, if they're operating, their phone's gone. I'm
Yes and no.
concentrating
Look,
on this.
I always prioritise people around me. So there's
Yep.
certain people that I'll answer their phone calls.
Yep.
But if you are ordering a plant and you need to know about that plant and right now and you want to know how much, all that sort of stuff, well, you're probably not the right customer for me.
Yep.
But staff or the crane company or
Yep.
all those sort of people around you for that day, I'll answer the phone. But plant moving day is stressful for me.
Yep.
If you've ever been around me, normally I'm relatively relaxed, relatively like easygoing.
Yep.
Plant moving day, if you're Joe Blow walking down the street and you're asking me some question, my first question to you is, do you have $50 in your pocket? And people go, oh, but why? It's like, well, every 5 minutes, all this equipment's going to cost me $50.
Yep.
So if you want to talk to me,
Let's do it.
here's my card,
Yep.
call me tomorrow.
Yep.
And it's like, I've just got a quick question. I've said, I just like $50 because
Yeah.
I've got to pay for these cranes to
Yeah.
get off rigging this tree up
Yeah.
or whatever to answer your question. And that's the sort of level of stress that I get into, is that it's just your efficiency for that day. Don't stop equipment.
Yep.
And that goes back to the whole mining thing. Like, you do not stop the excavator if the excavator's digging. You
Yep.
do not
Leave it
stop.
alone.
You leave them alone. If there's a break in the window, so if there's a stop, you
Yep.
can jump on the excavator, jump off the excavator, but you do not stop that excavator. You
Yep.
keep that piece of equipment moving
Yep.
until there's a stoppage. So
And then you go talk.
then you go talk. So that's plant moving
That's pretty-
day,
So there's 2. Plant moving day, phone call day.
and then there's just sort of that business sort of background, sort of nursery work, inspecting, sort of that sort of stuff. So there's like inside my role or my job, there's like lots of different things. Like there's answering phone calls about buying plants, there's answering phone calls about selling plants, there's inspecting sites, there's making sure you've got enough potting mix, there's making sure your plants are watered, there's making sure that people around you are happy, making sure that the alliances that you've got with companies are going well.
Yep.
There's bringing pork rolls to Clint. There's
Which I think we've now done 3 times.
which is look, if anyone knows me, I love my food. So if you ever want to go for a random food tour of Adelaide,
Yep.
like we'll start at 7 a.m.
Yep.
and we'll finish at midnight, and there'll be like, you won't have to eat for 3 days.
Yep.
And you'll find all these places that you drive past every day.
Because you travel so much.
And I do backstreet driving because you
I do
find
too, but
you
that's
find
because I'm
cool-
impatient.
you find cool plants
Yeah.
on backstreet. So I've always done backstreet driving, and yeah, so I've got all these cool places. So if you want Lebanese pizza bread, my goodness, in Theberton there's a place that is just like the best, like quick snack, which turns into a meal, and it costs you like $2.50, and it's like amazing. And then you got Italian breads up on McGill Road, and there's like Vietnamese meat rolls.
We
and
should
then
do
I've got
this.
a dim sim shop.
You're
and
keen
then
as. You're just like, I just won't eat on a
and
Sunday and we'll do it on a Monday.
pies. So I always say you eat meat rolls, and I'm trying to not use the
Yeah,
other
that's fine.
words.
Yep.
The meat rolls on the flats,
Yep.
in particular the northern areas, and then you eat meat pies everywhere else.
Yep.
So I could,
Because those, I guess they're...
certain areas do good food.
Yep.
For certain types. So meat pies, I can take you probably to a dozen places where you're going to go, which one is better.
Yep. And it's the,
And for me, it's not about better. It is which one's good and convenient.
Yeah.
So it's not about comparing
yeah.
bakery A, bakery C, bakery F, whatever.
Yeah.
It's about, I'm driving past here, so I'm hungry right now, and I'm driving, and where can I stop conveniently, which is not...
Because you've got a trailer.
You know by now that does not stop me.
It's
easier to drive around high-vis trailer ladder on the roof.
It's just that whole, like, if you're wearing high-vis and carrying a ladder, someone will let you take anything. He's like, no, just...
You just poke it in somewhere. You just...
I guess for anyone listening, Waterpro is based on a very busy, I guess, almost Adelaide CBD street, and Peter manages to roll in with a trailer with a plant on it and park whenever he needs to. I asked him not to bring his trailer today because I knew we'd be doing, I guess, an extended version, but
I just would have parked in the parklands. Put a flashing light on. It's like put witches' hats around it,
and then they would have called you and said, "Hey, you need to move your car." And you're like, $50.
No one questions you.
It's going to take 5 minutes.
No one questions you when you got a flashing light and high vis and cones, and then you put your bonnet up if you really want to nth degree, and it's fine.
So while you're driving, do you listen to the radio, or are you a podcast guy, or are you talking, or are you thinking, or?
My brain doesn't stop, so I'm probably thinking, I listen to the radio. So
if we start the car right now, what radio station?
Triple J.
Yep.
Unless Clint, I have been. This is a Mazda problem, and Mazda, please fix this. I've asked you to fix this.
Tag the Mazda into the video.
It's Ford and Mazda. For some reason, when I'm talking on the phone and I turn my car off, it will turn to Mix FM. Every time. So, Mazda, if you're listening, you have a fault. I've asked you to fix it. Please fix it. Because I don't like commercial radio stations.
What is a skill or a thing that you can do that most people might be surprised to hear?
Skill that I do that I'm mostly surprised?
Yeah, like a hobby or a funny thing that you're capable of doing.
I do state when I get asked for the first time, what do you do for a living? I just say I do Peter stuff because I don't understand what I can't do, I suppose. I don't read and write very well. So if you get an email from me, it doesn't make any sense. It's probably because it doesn't make any sense.
I do Peter stuff. That should be the business name. peterstuff.com.au.
What do I do? It really depends on which group of people you're in.
So do you have a diverse group of friends? Like, do you kind of are you a bit of a chameleon with people?
Yeah, my group of friends are lots of doers.
Yep.
Lots of like people that doers. So
Yep.
I'm not really a person that sits back and talks about how can we open that can of beer.
Not gunners.
It's like
Yep.
I'm definitely a doer,
Yep.
and the people around me are doers. My weaknesses are definitely paperwork. That's why I'm building that part of my business up.
Yep.
And the people around me are genuinely the same, so I'm building that part of my business up to support my business, but also support other people that have businesses that support me as well. Probably one of my biggest skills is talking, and actually being able to talk to the right level. So not just talking to Clint from Waterpro as another director, but being able to talk to Joe Blow walking down the street when I don't have a crane, or talking to the demolition operator, to talking to the CEO of a big business, talking to someone high up in government.
Yep.
I've always been able to have that skill. So I can remember a day when I was at a big mine site. There was sort of 1,000 odd people on the mine site, and I was doing one of 5 roles that day, if not all 5, and I was down the pit floor directing the dozer operator to do the next drop cut. So next bench you're dropping in with a dozer. He did the ripping to get the excavator and directing him. Sort of 20 minutes later I was up in the boardroom with the CEO of that company and 2 or 3 of the board members and the general manager doing a presentation on what I was doing a presentation on that day. To then 3 hours later I was running into production meeting. So it's being able to change that sort of forum, and you can't talk to the CEO the same way you talk to a dozer operator, and you can't talk to a dozer operator the way you talk to the CEO. Like you can't pull out a PowerPoint presentation on the pit floor and say, we've got to do this conceptually. It's like, we're great and we're going to do this, or this is the problem, this is how we resolve it. It's like they need certain pieces of information to make their decision to do their job. And being able to swap between those two is actually quite a hard skill.
Yeah, I understand. Do you sleep much? 6, 7 hours?
Yes.
Yep.
It's one of those things that I do find it hard to turn off. That's why I have my little Bali holidays.
I understand. What's the weirdest request you've had with Adelaide Plant Recovery from a client or a customer?
spending more money than the value of the plant recently.
Yep.
I've had a project recently which I have suggested not that we don't do the project 5 times from 5 different people from 5 different companies. I did that project last week.
Yeah.
I spent more money than the value of the plants. Every time I spoke to the people, I said, I will just give you the plants when you want to replant these plants.
Yep.
But there was emotional connection to some of these plants, and I was like, every step of the way, I said, these plants are worth not very much.
Yep.
I've got stock in my nursery. I will just give you.
Yep.
I won't even charge you to install them, and I've still done the project.
Okay. Because they chose a sentimentality over finance.
Which I do have some sentiment, but from my point of view, if you look at it as an engineering project, what's more cost effective?
You go straight nuts and boltsy.
Yeah. So
Mate, we've got to...
But saying that, one of my want to do projects, which is completely out there, weird, that I want to do as a business progression is Moreton Bay Figs. Mm-hmm. So the ones we see all the big roots across the ground. Yeah. I want to move one of them.
Jesus.
But I want to move one a minimum that the roots are popping above the ground, so it needs to be 8 metres by 8 metres. So it means 8 metres tall, 8 metres wide.
So an example, what if Adelaide City Council, they're all heritage listed or whatever, but if it had to be moved.
So if one had to be moved, so if a client wanted one, it would have to fit a whole heap of terms and conditions, because I've already started investigating and it's if you wanted, so if a client just built a massive manor house and they wanted one of these trees to
in the middle of the front yard,
it would have to go from a rural to a rural or a whatever location, and I'd be using a helicopter.
And what do we, just to indulge me, like $100,000?
I reckon you could probably do it for about 50.
Plus the cost of the plant?
The plant will be free.
Because someone needs to get rid of it, and
someone will want to save it, most likely.
Yeah, but someone would want to save it. Yep.
Someone want to save it, and the helicopters aren't that expensive for what we're looking at in the grand scheme of things. Like,
it's not a sentence I expected to hear today.
It's not that expensive. It's like
the helicopters are not expensive.
It's not like I'm looking at one of those Skyhawks or Elvis, or what do they call it, with like the aerial bombers.
Yeah, moving in winter when we're not worried about bushfires. They're not doing much.
It's got capacity of about 20 ton.
Okay, how much do they cost an hour?
About 1,400.
Okay, cool.
It's not that bad.
No worries. And you get to go in the helicopter with them, obviously, because it's Peter stuff.
Well, I wouldn't be in that helicopter. I'd be in the helicopter following it, because you've got to be on the ground supervising it, and then you've got to be in the helicopter, because you can't like drive a car at the same speed as a helicopter.
I'm sure you could, Peter.
We will figure it out one day. We'll figure it, but it's just one of those. That's been one of my like it's a challenge that someone.
It's kind of the top of your tree, isn't it?
It's more the that can't be done.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, if you like anything can be done. It's just how much.
And a Harrier jet's just going to fright the plant, so you have to use a helicopter.
But then the one of the questions when I started asking, I've done a little bit of research on it, and the first thing they stated, do you realise on how much downforce that size helicopter with that size plant will be on it? And it's like, a fair bit. And it's like, if it's in a residential situation, there'll be no vertical fences left. Like, it sort of makes sense. Like, you're saying there's 20 ton of plant plus whatever the helicopter is. So there's 30 ton. There's 30 ton of opposite force trying to hold that thing in the air, like that sort of, and then that goes down. So it makes sense. But then the question is, can you dissipate that by having a longer rope, or I don't know. There's just a whole heap of ifs.
If you had to choose between getting a license to fly a plane or a helicopter, which would you choose?
Probably helicopter. It's a bit more free. Plane,
you
can sort of
you just go A to B. Helicopter, you go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, well, helicopter is A to B.
Yeah.
A plane, you've got to go A, B is the airport.
Yeah.
C is the new airport. And D is your location.
Yeah. So, or is the chopper, you just land on top of your house and off you go.
Look, as long as you get asked for permission or forgiveness.
I'm sure there's
I'm sure there's rules around it which we could figure out on how to make them work for us.
What are you licensed out to at the moment? Trucks and that, or you handle business with your trailer and your car?
Trailer, car. I've also, one of the things I've learnt is that when you've got big stuff, you are genuinely organising it. So do you need to be using your phone and driving a semi with a 10-ton plant on the back, or do you
Yeah.
just hire one in? So excavators, bobcats, all that sort of stuff, yes.
This is the question that I had written down as my second question, and obviously, as happens, it gets a bit carried away. But if I was to go back and, I guess, talk to the people you went to school with, say high school, and ask them about the kind of person that you were then, what would they say about you?
I reckon confidence levels change completely.
So compared to back then?
Compared to now, look, I was dyslexic. Am still dyslexic. I put in systems in place to not have that as a disadvantage, I suppose. Yep. My dyslexic helps me with the idea that I don't think the way as normal people.
And you've just come to go, that's good.
That's good. I put systems in place. I use my iPhone. It can talk to you. Most people don't realise that. You can highlight a whole email, press go and drive. I've got that sort of same software on my computers. I've got people to proof stuff if I need to. All that sort of stuff. Use a lot of the similar words. So whatever. There's a thing called Google. There's like different ways of doing things. So back then I wasn't confident because it was like very much when you were like 15, 18, you know, you're in that high school environment which any weakness is drawn upon.
And magnified, and like you can't read your dead shit. Like it's like, yeah, but now I look back at that and look, there's probably one person I would be able to call up or know something about. There's a few, like Facebook's one of these things that you know stuff about people, but it doesn't mean anything really. So there's probably not too many of my that group that I keep in contact with. Yep.
Just because it's Adelaide versus Geelong.
Yep.
And they're not really. From where the high school I went to, people just didn't do anything. It's like, you know, you could probably guess the same conversation, what they've done, which I'm sure being a different business, so being a business person, but being something that's not normal business.
That's right.
You develop skills. You've got your versus like, I really find it frustrating when people just want to talk to like, oh, the weather's bad today. It's like, well, does that really affect my job? I can't change that. Yeah. You know, like this week it's raining. It's like, well, you know, I was moving a...
Someone's not keen on the rain. Dog camp.
You know, so it's just, you know, I moved a palm tree in the rain. You know, you just deal with it. Like you can't change it. You just work with it around it. Where I know there's not too many people in the world that just in the percentage of population that just keep going.
Did you find university hard?
Same sort of thing in that like that's just facts in the life is that your brain's still maturing until you're 25. There's still there's lots of immature people out there.
As soon as you said that, I thought of the stuff we've got here that are under 25, and it just gave me some hope.
So your brain's still developing until 25. I suppose I never really hit my potential until I started getting into mining, and you're just starting to be able to make decisions. You're employed to make decisions.
Yeah, okay. I guess the mining thing as well, you've probably got a lot of procedural... Is it always procedural?
No, it's procedural, but there's also a hell of a lot of coaching in mining. Yep. So if you're thinking that you're working in a really hard environment, and there's a lot... So you're not employing the standard people that would be best for that position, so you've got to educate and train people to get into those positions, or the people you have in positions to make decisions. One of the most interesting things I got told during my mining training is making the wrong decisions better than making no decision.
Okay.
Which is and you look at that and go, what does that mean? So if you are trying to drive from point A to point B, and you stop at a stop sign because it says stop, and you don't make a decision, you've stopped. You can't get to point B.
Yep.
You as a human has to make a decision. So it says stop, but you have to make a decision at that point. You're a T intersection, and you could go left or right. But you also got to make the decision of taking your foot off the brake pedal and putting your foot on the accelerator. So if you hadn't made a decision, you wouldn't have got to B. You'll be stopped at the first stop sign.
Yep.
So use that as a concept of making the wrong decision. And then if you went went left or right, you went left, and the known route should take you 5 minutes, so left is 5, right is 4 normally. Yep. and you go, I like the shorter route, but I want to get a meat roll on the way. If you made the decision of going left or right, and you have to go left, and then it goes all the way around to then you get to the meat roll shop, to then you've made a decision at least that you need to go left, and you're going to go all the way around and then go back around.
That started off so good, Peter. It started off so deep, and I was like, this is a 1-minute Instagram clip. It's going to be so good. It's going to be motivational. It's going to be, you're better off making some decisions than no decisions.
And then there it goes, meat roll.
Yeah, meat roll.
I like food. My decision every day is what cool food can you eat or share with someone.
Not far out. I think we went in a very funny direction there. You talked briefly about the rebranding, and I'm aware that you've set yourself up to now do some pretty cool networking / I guess boutique, unique one-on-one events with, I guess, future clients.
Yep.
What else should people be looking out for at the moment? Or do you have something that you want to be? One
of my biggest focus I want to do for people in Adelaide is letting people know that you just don't go to Bunnings to buy a plant, and plants aren't concrete. So one of the things I really want to focus on in my role and my business is education. So when I get asked the same question 5 times, you go, is that because it's a stupid question or there's just not been educated?
Yep.
So one of my frustrations in life is you get people on the phone ring up and say, I want a 3-metre frangipani.
Yep.
Well, you've been in my yard and we've had this discussion out there.
Yep.
What does a 3-metre frangipani mean? Like, can you please give me a price for a 3-metre frangipani? And I go, it's between $1,000 and $5,000. And they go, so I'll buy the $1,000 one because I'm budget constrained. And they turn up and they go, that's horrible. And I go, well, that's what you chose, a $1,000 plant.
Yep.
So my education is about, I want to educate people. So I want to educate that, when you go to Heine's and a 140ml pot with X in it,
yep,
and you want 50 of them, you can probably just grab the first 50 because there's very minimal variance in it. But when you've got a 30-year-old tree, it's had kids throw rocks at it, the next door neighbour broke a stick off it,
yep,
there's been a tree growing over the top of it, it's been in different environments,
yep,
to get to 30 years. So you need to be very specific about what you're actually after. Yep. Are you after a stick? Are you after a shrub? Are you after that sort of stuff? So it's the education. So I want to educate people around plants. I want to educate people about choosing the right plant. I want to educate people about in particular, project managers of life. Like project managers for big companies state, I need a plant and I'm going to plant it like a piece of concrete.
Because it's more science to them than art?
It's more of a project. It's just a line item.
Okay.
We need 50 of this plant,
yep,
and and the project starts here, and plants get planted on day 82.
Yep.
Is day 82 the best day to plant the plant? So I recently got involved in a project, and just as more of the consulting thing, it's like we have. I'm from this company, and we're working on this project. And do you have this sort of palm tree?
Yep.
And I go no, and I said, I assume you're ringing up because you planted the trees the last week or the week before Christmas. And they said, yes, how did you know? I said, well, because I've followed this project. I've been consulted about this project several times already. And you chose the wrong palms. They were chosen by a person in Melbourne as a brief... my dog eats bottle caps. It was chosen by a architect in Melbourne for Melbourne conditions.
Yep.
Not Adelaide conditions. That palm works here, but it has to be very specific conditions to put it in.
Yep.
You haven't put them in the right conditions, and
yep,
you planted them on in the death window for plants, for that sort of plant.
The death window.
And
I
call
it week of Christmas.
No, I call it so there's certain plants I will never move or transplant or plant in ground unless you put a really good system around it from the 1st of November to the 1st of March.
I think we spoke about this before, didn't we? And I thought that was just because that's when he likes to have holidays. And he's just like, I'm not working then.
There's another one, but yes. But they chose, and then just after Christmas this year, we had hot wind, hot crappy wind.
And these guys are trying to fit deadlines that
They're going to fit deadlines.
are financial. We got to sell the house. We got to close the deal. We got to whatever.
So it's education about that. And I ran through the whole system, and I said most likely you used X soil, you did this, and this, and they go, did you run the project? You've just nailed everything that we've done. I said, well, that's what you've done because I know on how this project
reacts.
How it works. And they go, how can we save it? I said, well, how much money do you want to spend? And it's because it's a contractor, it's nothing, and we want it to look good now, and nothing. So it's well, what do you want to do going forwards? And it just happens that way. So it's about the education, and I'd like to really spend some focused time on talking to people like project managers. Don't treat plants like concrete.
Yep.
Don't treat plants like a piece of concrete or steel. It's not. It's a living It's a living thing, and actually treat it like that, and move forwards going for that.
It's kind of
so
human resources, isn't it? It's kind of like employing someone.
Yep.
You're trying to find the right person to fit the job.
So
and no one's the same.
If they actually sat down with someone like myself or other plant people and said, we want to do this, how can we make that done the most economic way? This person who rang me up, I spoke to, I said, you'll probably spend 100 hours trying to solve this problem, haven't you, since you've done it?
Yeah.
It's yeah. And how many hours did your landscaper spend planting the plants? It's probably less than that.
Yeah.
But because it's as you said, a financial thing, 100 hours of a project manager at $160 an hour on the books, they've just spent $16,000 to talk about the crap plants, the poor stock that they got out of Queensland.
Yep.
They don't even know that it's poor stock. They haven't planted it in the right direction. All this sort of stuff. They've spent $16,000 with a project manager and involved all these other people. So it's probably up to $25,000 of hours to talk about $5,000 worth of plants.
Yep.
And it's that all could have been saved by choosing the right plant and actually having someone with a backbone, as not a contractual backbone, going, yes, we can do that, versus that's not appropriate. This is why, and having the right person at that.
So do you find is that you're that kind of person that you're willing to speak up for what you believe in?
Yes.
And do you find that people sometimes find that abrasive?
I see. This is yes in one way. General,
it has to be that way. This
is the bit where I've moved my business from public to wholesale.
Yep.
So for instance, a landscaper who's quoting on a job, they want to know what's going to potentially go wrong.
Yep. And you can talk to them candidly.
You can say, they want to do this, and I go, I would not do that because this, and this.
Yep.
Your project's going to fail. Going the other way, where you have the yes people, where he's like, yeah, that's great, I can supply that.
Yep.
And then their project fails.
Yep.
And then they're out of money.
Yep.
And then they come and try and chase money, and then you spend time hiding.
Yeah.
It's that's not the person who I'd
You
prefer.
don't want to treat,
I would prefer to tell people, and I'll probably turn down $50,000 worth of work or selling plants easily in my 4 years.
Yep.
People going, I want a frangipani for the hills. It's no, they'll die. Bye.
Yep.
And they go, but we really want a frangipani for the hills. And I'll go, until you build a glass house with heating and this and this and this and this, I won't sell your frangipani. And they go, but we just want to buy a frangipani. I said, yeah, but just go and get the $5,000 and go to another place, and you can open up your green bin and throw the $5,000 in it and go and get the mulch and put it on your garden and say you've just done what you wanted to do.
Because that's what it's going to.
That's what it's going to turn up with. So, and people go, "That's interesting," and they genuinely thank you for it.
Yeah.
If you,
they're probably like, "Well, that was a bit harsh," but
when you're investing time and money into cool old plants, you're not. It's money.
Dogs are getting restless.
Enjoying sun.
Thank you so much for coming in, especially at short notice. You're always reliable for a short notice conversation, so I do appreciate it. If people want to find out a bit more about you, where's the best? You Instagram first, Facebook, Gumtree?
Bit of both. Not Gumtree anymore.
You're off Gumtree?
I'm off Gumtree. There's no ads.
Turn over a new leaf.
There is. There's none of my brands that I want to lay claim to on Gumtree at the moment.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, we'll link all your information up at the bottom of the podcast. They can get in touch and come out and have a look at the yard by appointment.
Yep, by appointment. So if you're a landscaper and you want to know more about plants, book in a session. If you do around lunchtime, you will get a feed. If you do around the afternoon, you'll get a beer. Come for a wander around. Food opens up people, and you come and have a chat and see what cool plants, what we can do for you.
It is a very welcoming environment.
If you like dogs, come get a pat.
Yeah. Thanks to the dogs as well. Pleasure. You guys were really well behaved. Thanks, man.
Cheers.